up, friends? This is Jazz bringing you a different type of video. It is a theater review. I never did one of these for a long time. Sorry you didn't get one for a wrinkle in time. Probably won't. So, but this one is about the movie Old by M. Night Shyamalan. Now guys, a couple disclaimers. One, heavy spoilers. I usually like to ramble and to go into details. Two, yes, you're seeing my face during this. I'm doing a vlog style review for this one because I don't think I could get enough footage anyway. So I'm just, that way you have something visual to see. And three, what I say is my opinion. I am not a critic. I am not demeaning anyone else's opinion, so if you like it, hate it, feel it different about it, that's fine. Leave it below. I want to know. Now, to start off, where do I fall? Let's say just a little bit better than it's alright. You know, I don't hate it. I do kind of love it, but I don't love it. It's not the masterpiece, you know, some people might claim. Again, those who feel that way is fine though. But I admit, we'll say this movie is in my style of things I like to see. So that's why I'm just above. It's not bad, not good. I'll say to me it's good, not a masterpiece. So let's go into the technical stuff about it. How is the acting? M. Night, again, it falls very low there. Like, I may not have noticed, I'm saying that based on what a lot of people say. And thinking back, I could see that now. We'll just put it this way. As all you know, or some of you may not know, I have special needs. And I have not had any confirmed diagnosis, for example, with, like, autism, ADD. But those two diagnoses run the closest to what I may have, if I don't have them. So I have trouble sometimes picking up emotions because of my special needs. That's one thing I'm affected by. So, some of you might say, oh, that acting is so bland, or it's so funny, you know, like, it's, like, for those who can get the tone of it, it's something I have trouble with. So, I don't see the acting as bad like some people who can understand that stuff, and those emotions do. Well, let's put it this way. Some people, for example, Doug Walker, we don't like to talk much about Channel Awesome, but Doug Walker says to him, it's so bad, it's good. It's the so bad, it's funny type of thing. Like, he and a lot of people in the theater, his theater showing, were laughing. I really didn't do that. Like, I didn't, like, cringe. I didn't laugh, so you could argue, well, it must just be alright. Like, in some ways, but I love the thoughts of, again, this is where the spoilers come, aging, like, rapidly. Like, things like that interest me. So I was more into, I already read the spoilers, so I knew a lot of what was coming. So I was just watching to see how it was presented, in a way. Like, I knew what the plot was of the story. I didn't say, spoil it with my family, to my aunt who went with me, so I'm proud of myself of that. But I watched it knowing a lot what was going to come. And I wanted to kind of notice her reaction, in a way. So it was more fun in that way for me, but I did not really pick up on the humor so much. Okay, you're probably like, Jazz, you took it seriously. You took that, yes and no. I know it was supposed to be funny. I know to some people it was supposed to be hammy, in a way. I didn't pick up on that, but I didn't necessarily, like, cripple what's going to happen or take it so seriously either. I will admit there was one scene I did a little bit, and, well, two scenes in a way that stuck out to me. Spoilers are really starting at this point. The story is about, I might as well narrate up to the point where I'm going at. This story is pretty much about a family of 4. The parents are on the verge of a divorce, and the mother has a tumor, which at this point is benign. It's 3 centimeters. It's not as serious. And she is cheated on her husband, which she feels the husband doesn't know this part yet, but they were on the verge of a divorce. And the kids did not know that or the tumor thing with their mother, but they want to give them one last memorable vacation. And because of her tumor, they're on pharmaceutical care, so they went a trip through the pharmaceutical ads to this resort, and they're given the drinks of their choice, and then they're recommended by the resort's owner to go to this beach. Before we go to that point, though, the 2 kids, there's a young boy who's 6 named Trent, and his older sister by 5 years, 11, who's named Maddox. Now, Trent makes friends with the resort's owner's nephew named, pardon my pronunciation, Inad. He's more in the, not Jamaican, the Iran look, Muslim look. I can't express it, so I'm sorry to those, you know what I mean. But they're roughly the same age at the time of the movie, and they become really good friends, and they have a game where they ask a person what their name is and what their occupation is, because Trent is pretty smart for his age in a way. And you think, well, that's kind of a creepy thing to do, but they're kids. So it's a game they're playing. And this game is going to come forefront in the story much near the end. So remember that part. And remember the friendship with Trent and Enad too. Because that's going to come into play near the end too. So Enad has been starting this game with Trent where he gave him letters to decode. They're like symbols, and the game is, there's a symbol for each letter, and he gives a cute little one where it says ice cream contest, right? But this whole thing is going to come play later in the end. So finally the family is recommended this beach, and they go there. They meet 3 other couples. One other couple, Charles and Crystal, and their little daughter, Kara. They come into play just before the resort too, where he saves a woman's life who's having an epileptic seizure. And he's a nurse, because he's a doctor. That's the thing, he's a doctor, his wife is I forget, because I really do not pay attention to a lot of that, except for the main important ones. So, they're at a beach. They meet each other at the beach. There's another couple. Well, there's 3 other couples. No. Okay, there's 2 other couples and 1 new singleton, who was a couple at one point or another. But the name's Charles and Crystal and Kara. The other couple's name is Jaron and Patricia. Or no, was that Patricia? Yes, Patricia. Then the singleton is mid-sized sedan. Yeah, really weird name. I know, that's going to be another thing with some of the weird names, but he's a rapper. So Karen is a nurse. The male, yes, a male nurse too. Alright, guys. And Patricia was the one who had the seizure earlier in the movie. Now, it's funny. Karen is going to be an interesting Karan or whatever. It's going to be an interesting topic for me, because he opens up 2 discussions in this video. One, the dialogue. Now, guys, as I said, for the most part, I never really saw the problem with their acting, because I am not good with emotions, or like, so when you're supposed to show a certain emotion in delivery, I don't really notice it because I can't feel those emotions so much. But Karen, or Karan, whatever you pronounce it, even I could notice his acting being a little bit bad for the most part. There were a few very obvious moments where he's introducing himself. I'm Karen, I'm a nurse, this is my wife or girlfriend Crystal. She has epilepsy, and she's a psychologist, you know, he was just more explanation. That's the thing. It's, what is it? Explanation heavy. Exposition, yes. Exposition heavy. If someone's saying something, it almost feels like it's just part moving the story along, right? You do sort of see emotion in it in some areas, right, where they build up the feelings and, you know, how the characters connect to each other. But there's going to be times where you just see it as, oh, this happens. Oh, they're having a divorce, right? They're explaining how they're having a divorce and how they're feeling, which they more explain their feeling than you actually feel it, right? It's like they're pushing it out, showing to the audience, oh, this is what's happening. Now, another thing about, how do I put it? I was leading up to everything. Alright, right, there was a grandma and a dog too, and a dead girlfriend for mid-sized sedan. Yeah, see how rememberable these characters are? Yeah, like there was a grandma, a dog, and a dead body. Okay, that's pretty much what that character was, as a dead body. Not the grandma, but yeah, the grandma. But we get to kind of know her a little bit before. Yeah, spoilers, almost everyone dies. So, that's that out of the way. But Mid-Sedan's companion, you see her get undressed and about to go into the ocean. That's it! Yeah, she really isn't supposed to have a personality, except for to be discovered as a dead body by a poor 6 or 7 by this point year old Trent. So yeah, they start learning things are happening when the body is found. The grandma just suddenly dies, and alright. There's also Guy and Priscilla, which are the main couple in there. Forgot their names too. And Priscilla notices something is wrong with Trent, because his shorts aren't fitting anymore, and he's feeling tight, and the kid's always eating through that giant thing of food that the resort gave them, which they had planned out, because there's 3 young kids that still are but a growing age. So they need all that food to metabolize with them getting older. So they're get a lot hungrier, and they feel a lot different. So another point when Karen goes into the story is when they just meet the kids, right? And they're asking their occupation like how they did before, and they learn about the jobs of them. And he said, okay, how old are you? Like, let me guess, 11. To Trent, who was 6 at the very beginning. He said, no, I'm 6. And they think they're pulling their leg, but then Patricia says, well, they're going through a lot. Like, some things are happening by this point. So, oh yeah, parting the dogs too. But anyway, and they think that, you know, it's a joke. And then the mother looks for her kids, who she doesn't know has aged tremendously to this point. And they said, aren't they your kids? And then it has to be explained that they were 6, they were 11. Now they're like 16 and 11 at this point, 11 and 16, so they know something is going on, but it isn't until a certain point where they realize they're aging in real time. I mean, like, this is what it's supposed to happen. It's time speeding up, and not something that the kids ingested, and not some flu virus. It's happening to all of them, but the adults, it's not as noticeable, because the kids, it's a bigger jump, right? They're physically changing more than the adults. But one thing that is different though is that the hair doesn't change, and the nails, in a way, because it's dead. Everything there is dead, so that can't like rapidly grow. So their hair is not changing, but their body is, and their mind apparently is. To a degree, it's slower than the physical development. Another example is that Kara, and this is coming on the creepy parts, Kara, whatever, and Trent start to feel the hormones at some point when they're almost 15. They end up just not showing on screen. They come out of a tent. Horrifyingly, Kara starts to grow. She's pregnant. And Trent's like, but I thought you have to do it like 10 times. Yeah, you could tell he's young-minded. Maybe a little older than what his 6-year-old mind was. But he's at this point where he doesn't get it like, I thought you're supposed to do it like 10 times to get a baby. So you're thinking, oh, a new character is going to be in this. Nope, the baby dies within 30 seconds of birth. Yeah, but the pregnancy is so horrifying. Because, I mean, imagine, it's more horrifying because of the reaction of the girl and the boy, like Trent and Kara. Because they don't understand what's going on. Suddenly a baby's coming, and at first everyone's happy because the baby's crying. They're like, the baby's breathing to be. Suddenly it stops, and Patricia, who's holding the baby at this point, is like, but I don't get it for like 30 seconds, like a second. I turn my head and he stops. The baby dies of inattention because of how quick time is. They never had a chance for the baby to nourish or for anything to happen, so he dies of malnutrition. That's how fast time goes. That even though usually a baby could be like 5 seconds, oh, he doesn't need food yet. This baby needed it with the second he came out. Like, obviously there was nothing they could have done because they didn't understand this. But with the hindsight, they should have just attached right on and continued. Because that was the only way that baby could have lived. If within the millisecond of him being born, be pushed to his mother to be nursed. That could not have happened. So the baby was doomed from the get-go, which was sad in a way, because it would have been interesting seeing the baby. Like, it's like it had no point but for shock value. Personally, like, if they should have had more to it, like the baby will be living a little longer to get to know the baby, maybe build some more connection between Kara and Trent. But no, not long after that happens, Kara dies because she's so emotional at this point. She tries to escape by climbing up the rocks, but she will black out eventually, and she falls very high to her death. Now, something is figured out within the story. Almost every couple that came has at least one person with an underlying medical condition. Priscilla has a tumor. Patricia is epileptic. Both Charles and Crystal have conditions. Crystal having a calcium deficiency. Charles, which will come in later play, is a violent schizophrenic, which is a mental illness rather than a physical illness. Mid-sized Saddam has, I think, hemophilia, which is if he has a small bleed, it could kill him because it is hard to clot. His significant other had MS, and the kids had no problems whatsoever. They were collateral because if their families weren't allowed to come, it would bring suspicion. Perhaps, I don't know why. It was more of a suspicion thing, so they had to bring the kids along. The grandmother is probably, just collateral as well. I don't remember her having any issues. Jaren was the partner of Patricia, so he went under that guise. So there's at least one person in every family there that had an underlying medical condition. So this will come into play later as well. So Jaren dies as well not long after Kara. He tries to swim out to get medication for Patricia. He tries his best to escape, thinking, oh, he's a good swimmer, he can make it. partway within the story, we learn that, that Maddox learns about what happened with her mother, her tumor, her betrayal of her father, and the fact they were going to get a divorce. So she wants to be alone for a while. She tries to swim out and discovers Jaren's body, which freaks her out. Poor Patricia finds this out too. Before backing up again, an incident happened before this. A tumor happened, and they had to operate on it because it became like the size of a cantaloupe. But in the middle of the surgery, Charlie's like, is there this movie between, oh, I forget his name. But there were two significant actors. How I can't remember it. I don't know why. But he just suddenly asks this in the middle of his surgery, just becoming completely delusion, where Jaren was kept him on task. They had to hold it open because that's another thing. He tries to attack mid-sized Saddam, saying, oh, he was going to attack me, which was not true. But the cut heals itself. So that's the point of the story too. So they had to hold open the wound of Priscilla when she was removing the tumor. But all the way during this, he's keep asking about the actors and their, role together. I'm not a big movie buff, so I don't know these actors as much. So they have to keep them on task, which eventually it does work out. So something is going on with Charlie, And, well, Geron's already dead, you know what I mean by this point, and Charlie starts to go crazy. He kills mid-sized Saddam before... Yeah, he kills mid-sized Saddam. I think before Geron dies, he just stabs him to death and he bleeds out. And so they're subdued him without the knife, all by himself. They figure something is wrong with him, and not that he's doing this in a malicious way, just that he's becoming delusional. They're at a point now where they're like, okay, we have to all stick together. Patricia suddenly goes into a seizure. Yeah, she dies too because Charles is too out of it because of his paranoia to do anything to help. Sharon is dead. So, well, that was pretty traumatic. What else could go wrong? Try Charles getting to a point where he actually goes and attacks Guy, who is now going blind because of what's going on. And Priscilla is starting to become deaf, hard of hearing. So he almost gets the hang of him, like Charles. He's got to the point now where he's nuts and he's a doctor and he doesn't want to lose his position. So he sees Guy as some patient he worked on that went wrong. I don't know. But poor Guy's getting the hang of it for doing absolutely nothing wrong. Priscilla tries to get the children away, which are now about 20 or 30, like 20s anyway. And while they're hiding, they see Crystal, Charles's wife, getting contorted because she's losing the calcium, right, that she had in her body, and she's also distraught about her daughter's death, which she learns about in a more, she was too out of it to even pay attention for a while after what happened with the baby. So she's starting to see herself as ugly, and this big rock breaks on her shoulder, and she contorts extremely crazy to the horror of the two kids watching. Good thing the girl was dead, that Carl was dead. I just seen her mother turn like that. And ironically, earlier she told her daughter, sit up, do you want your back hunched over? Yeah, kind of a clue in between there. But after that, Priscilla figures out that they found little pieces of metal on the beach that have rusted, which she warns her kids not to pick up because it's dangerous and it can cause lead poisoning or something like that. And she scratches Charles with it, which leads to a very quick, poisoning of his body and kills him. leaves the four of them still there, the family that started it all, on the beach. So you're thinking, aw, does the whole family get out together? No, the parents die. Yeah, and one of those, very, what positive thing about the M. Night Shyamalan is no one's safe. People die, right? The parents end up passing of old age, but you wouldn't notice because I guess their hair doesn't change, whether it's graying or whatever. That never changed. That was an excuse for that. But so the father's still looking semi-young because of his hair being so brown, dying of old age, him first and then his wife. But they end things on it amicably. Not just that, they love each other. They said they would not like to be anyone else but them, with now. And obviously because of their age, they forgot why they were fighting. And they even forgot why they wanted to leave this island. So they kind of died in a peaceful way. They weren't contorted or stabbed. They at least had a very nice, death, surrounded by their children. It's shocking if it was their children seeing that, when before they thought they could rely on them for most of their lives. So the next day comes and both Trent and Maddox are within their 50s now. So they estimate they have 13 hours left, right? Do you still want to figure out how to get out? And okay, they agreed to, but let's make a sandcastle first, which is a very nice gesture. They're doing something fun instead of stressing for once. I could say that now, where before I'm like, you got 13 hours left. And you don't even have that when you're too old to do anything about it. But, you know what? They're relaxed, and they've come to a point now, they lost everyone else, they want to have a little bit of fun, and they said, oh, let's decode this little message that Ayed gave. The message that the nephew gave of the resort manager to Trent, because they were doing that for fun, and then he says, she's like, what's a little message? He just looks and saying, my uncle doesn't like the coral. What is that saying? Because before they were talking about this metal thing they could put around them, maybe to block them from the blackouts, saying, well, where are we going to make a metal tube, whatever. They concluded that this coral blocks out those frequencies, or whatever it is that's causing them to black out when they try to escape. So they end up somehow swimming in that coral. They end up swimming in that coral. Now, of course, M. Night Shyamalan almost always has a cameo in his movies. Well, this one was a little more bigger. Not as big as the lady in the, water, I forget what it's called. But he has a bit of a cameo where he drives them to the beach at first, and then he's watching them. So he looks and he thinks, oh, well, both Trent and Maddox are dead. So he announces to the pharmacist, yes, we'll get to that, to who he works for, and says, well, the last two subjects have died. Subjects, yes, that's going to come into play very soon, too. And they say, come on, we don't want it, okay, are you sure? We don't want another incident, right? And he says, I've been watching for a full minute. The last time we nearly escaped by going in that, drowned and died. So he thought they were good, and he returns back to what they call a pharmaceutical research team. Yes, there was a reason every person almost had one person in the family that had medical conditions, because they were using them as test subjects. Because the beach ages them rapidly, they could live almost a whole lifetime in a day. So those trials that could take a lifetime to test could be tested out and then shipped fast to further testing. So they were using them pretty much as subjects to see if a drug will work. But you think, well, I didn't talk about the dead bodies of Maddox and Trent, because there are none. Mr. M. Night Shyamalan's character made a huge error not waiting at least another, I don't know how many minutes he would have needed, but not double checking things, because they somehow got through the corral. He almost thought that at least Maddox was not going to make it because she got stuck in the coral, and Trent was trying to get her free. But then it goes that they walked up, you see two people walking up to one of the people. They asked, what's your occupation? Which he said, I'm a police officer. They walk up to him without saying, oh, who they are, because that would make him look nuts. And he'd be like, here. Like, he gives them a journal, which they discover with a bunch of names of the other subjects and stories written in it. And he hands out to their, look, like, he said, read this, right? And I guess he goes. And then they're about to start trial 74. Yes, that was trial 73. So, let's say there was an estimate between 7 and 12 people per group. They killed roughly 500 people already. 400 people, at least, already. So, yeah, it wasn't just a few people, now and then. This wasn't, like, a new thing for them. This is the only time they really failed, in a way. They made a huge error of judgment. Because the one who gives the journals to the guy is Trent. It shows and flashes back to him getting each other out. They took a breath. There was a small hole, so they took a breath and swam back above. And just when they were about to start trial 74, and to give the cocktails to one of the new couples, Trent pretends to knock into them and knocks it away. And when they say, oh, we'll just make more, it says, oh, I wouldn't drink anything those two give. And then they announce what their names were, which they know who Trent and Maddox are. And the owner's like, oh, it's like he cracked, like he's like, oh, jeez. And eventually, it all checks out. The journal, they're all missing people. It's shut down. And Trent is reunited with Enod, he did not know how bad it was, I don't think. He knew people came and didn't come back to some degree, but he didn't understand what was being happened to them. And he could recognize it was his friend, even though he was like 52 or something years old. But the look that nephew gave, it's like he's like, yeah, I did that. I busted your ass, uncle. So the nephew had a big part in everything that ended, the way it ended. Because if it wasn't for that decoded message, they wouldn't have known the escape route. How to safely, I don't think that nephew understood what it did, but knew that it was something his uncle hated. It didn't like people to know, so he knew it was somewhat important. And it was just the adult Trent who figured out why it was important. So they don't quite live happily ever after. I mean, really, they had to tell their aunt that her 6 and 11-year-old niece and nephew are now in their 50s, older than her, more than likely. Because when the cop asked, so how did your aunt take it? Well as someone who was told by a 50-year-old man that he's their 6-year-old or nephew. Yeah, or the other way around, but so they're still contemplating what's going to happen with their life. So, they're alive, but in a sense of the word, it was good, but a bad ending. A sad ending to me. I mean, they're both in their 50s. Trent might have a chance of producing again. Being a male. And you know how that works with a male. But poor Maddox. She's 55. She's never able to reproduce anymore because she passed that age. At least men can in very late life. And if you can find a young woman who's attracted to him despite how old he looks, then he's good. But there's almost no real chance for future family for Maddox. I mean, she could adopt, but who would look at an almost 60-year-old woman and, okay, I'm sorry. I know, and I hope that they change minds about that. But now, a lot of times, even nowadays, they don't really pick older couples as the first option for adoptees, because they may not be alive the next day. When you're above 50 years old, even in your late 40s, the mortality rate is higher. So they're more concerned with the child's long-term welfare. There are very rare exceptions, but with the age Maddox is, I don't even know if she would be a candidate for adoption. But maybe she'll have an open-minded group of people she could maybe foster. She could do something, but so much happened to these two adopt kids. They lost most of their lives, lost their parents. Poor Trent lost the potential love of his life in Kara. I mean, I know, like, I don't even know if it was more just the emotions of everything going on, but it really sounded like by the time Kara was killed, that he was somewhat in love with her in his own way of thinking. Like, there was even a point, well, this is when he thought he was going to be a parent, too, and that he would have to look after the kid because he did something wrong. So, but he was like, I think I'm going to marry her, Dad. Yeah, I think that was emotions talking, but even with the baby gone, he said, don't leave me, Kara. Like, don't leave me. Right? I think in some ways there was some love there with both of them, because they kind of technically knew each other as kids. Like, they played together. They got to know each other. And even though, yes, it was a day, well, this day was a lifetime, pretty much. So they spent quite a bit of time together. So I really think in some ways Trent was seriously thinking of the possibility of marriage with her. Even if it may have been really rash, I think it was a serious possibility. Of course, Maddox went through a lot too, with realizing what happened with her mother and her father. But she had less trauma. She only had the parents' death. And I suppose it was traumatizing seeing what happened to Mirza Saddam and, those other people too. But in some ways, Trent lost 3 people very important to him at that time. So they are going to need serious therapy. I know that for sure. I mean, I wonder if that will be public. Like in that universe, if the knowledge of everything that happened is going to come to light for other people worldwide to know. Because, I mean, who would believe, what therapist would believe some 50-year-old man saying, I started off a couple days ago as a 6-year-old boy, and we went to this beach, and everyone around me started to die, get older. I also almost had a baby, but he died too. I think they said what he said. So maybe they long enough to know what the gender was. Because he didn't decompose that fast. It took like an hour or so for it to happen. So they had a little time to figure all that out. So I think some therapists without the context and real information about what happened would be looking at it and going, okay, mental ward. Because it's something that usually never happens in real life. And this was portrayed as, I know it wasn't real, but, in their universe it was real life. So who would with the sane mind would believe that? It's hard to believe that the police officer connected it actually believed it. That was that same little boy who said, well, one of the same little boys said, what's your occupation? But I suppose there was a lot of clues of things that happened. It wasn't just him saying it. So if it's publicized to the world, then there would be a chance that would never happen again. Because yes, of course, a lot of them are going to jail because they killed over 400 people. Of course, they're going to jail. People go to jail for 2 or 3 people, 1 person even. 400 people they knew were going to die. Premeditated murder. First-degree murder. I would give them life or death themselves. So they probably would never have to worry about such maniacs again doing that. But if the whole thing was publicized, then I'm curious. I know that there's no think there's ever going to be a sequel to this because it was one-off thing. It was actually based on the graphic novel Sandcastle. Forget the name of the guy who made it. And it is quite a bit different, where a baby that is born on that beach actually survives. So miraculously, he did. And he is the last one on the island. And he does perish too, but not 30 seconds after his birth. There's more prominence to the birth in the actual graphic novel. Where in this one, it could have cut the whole thing out. And to me, it was just gore. It was just, freaking material, the freak you out material. a 15-year-old with a 6-year-old, 5-year-old's mind is giving birth and she's freaking out. That's pretty much what that was. If they had cut it out, then it may not have been, like, of course it was good trailer footage, but it just, that is what it is. It would have been nice to get to know the little baby that was born, to have another character that we could sympathize with, that maybe he could have escaped with his aunt and his father and grown up along with his great aunt. But that didn't happen. They killed him off as soon as he was born. You could hear him cry, so he was alive. He wasn't just born still. He was alive, and he just died in the woman's arms, which was the epileptic one, Patricia. Like, it's hard to explain. Now, as I said earlier, I do like this movie. The creepiness is up my alley, but those things with the acting, just certain things I would have liked if he had added. Like, he could have been more true to the kid being alive, in a way. But the scenery was magnificent. And it had heart. Like, you could tell that M. Night Shyamalan has heart for what he does. It's just his direction is not so good. Like, almost everyone who acts under him, who are normally good actors, just don't pull it off. Now, personally, there are a few actors that I think did okay. I think the guy who played Guy, and the guy who played Charles were pretty good, in a way. So was okay, how do I put it? Okay, the guy who did Charles, the guy who did Guy, and the one who did the teenaged Trent were okay, in my opinion. Like, the kids weren't so bad. The child actors, to me, weren't so bad because they were younger and it's a little more of an excuse. The little ones weren't bad. The very little ones. The teenagers, like Alex Wolff, and I forget who the other girl was for Maddox, and the one that was for Kara. How do I put this? I think out of all three of those teen actors, the one that did Maddox was the worst to me. She sounded more bland, more, just kind of robotic. Alex, well, he did alright, because he was supposed to act younger than his age. And I think he did okay acting like a kid. Like, there wasn't much else he could do. Like, when you act like a kid, there's a certain way you act. And you could believe he was kind of innocent in that way. So he did alright. Now, I think the worst actor for me, though, was the one who played Jaren. Because out of every actor, you could tell he was what they call Shyamalanized the most. He was mostly dialogue-driven. He could be a good assistant, to Charles, like when he was trying to operate on Priscilla, and he kept saying, okay, you're cutting the incision about this. He was able to talk him through his delirium long enough to get the tumor removed. So I think as a nurse, he has some experience with mental illness. Because he was slowly, him and God were slowly trying to get the knife from Charlie after he killed Mid-Sized Saddam. They said, here, hand it to me, you're going to give me the knife. I think he was trying to, Jaren was coaching Guy how to proceed. So I think they did that well too. I admit I'm impressed that they didn't go instantly ganging up on him after he killed Mid-Sized Saddam. They slowly, gently, they realized it wasn't all his fault, all his mind. He was only killed when he was a real danger to the last couple themselves, and they couldn't do a thing because they didn't have Jaren there anymore to coach them, or Patricia to help with his mental illness. So they had got to defend themselves, and they were going deaf and blind, so it just was crazy. But I think the actors, like Mid-Sized Saddam was okay too, I'll admit. But the rest of them were sort of like a little awkward, but as I said, with my ability to tell tone or inability, that wasn't a big deal to me. I still watched the movie. It got into it a little bit, the story, a little bit. The idea is great. It could have been better executed, but I like the idea. That's why I went to see the movie. I really like the idea of this movie. And the message Shyamalan is trying to show. which he already said was his message, so I knew before he had seen the movie about that, was that to value the present and not think about what could have been or what is to come. Enjoy your moment, like with your loved ones. And it was even kind of said at the beginning, where Priscilla was like to Trent, hey, enjoy this moment. So it was sort of pushed at the very beginning about that, in that dialogue too. Like he said, I can't wait till I'm older. Oh, I'm like 6.5 and he wants to be older. Like that's the thing. The adults often think in the past, like, oh, what could have been. Where kids usually say, I cannot wait to grow up. And this is a movie that kind of will bring it together and shut some people up. I mean, imagine, like, they thought they had their whole lives ahead of them and saying to enjoy your childhood. Well, they really should have, because it was, like, they lived their whole childhood in, like, few hours, really. Because it took half hours a year. So, in 2 hours, they aged, like, 4 years. And in almost 5 years, and what is it? I'm trying to remember. In 3 hours, they're pretty much, you know, almost teens. So it's kind of hard to explain, like, but I admit that I think they did put the point pretty well, like what he was going for. And my aunt, well, she was like, yeah, it was alright. Like, she was one of those actual mid-ground. She didn't hate it. She didn't love it. As I said, I'm just a little bit above. I'm liking it. Like, I thought it was, to me, I enjoyed the movie. I can't say it's good by any means, but it was more, and I can't even say it was laughably good. I liked the story. I'm very indifferent to tonal acting. So, it just didn't bother me as much as some people, the emotional in the words. So I just saw the words in the story. And some people like me can enjoy it that way. I mean, the only one I could obviously tell that bad acting was the actor who played Jiren, and I cannot even say, I never saw any of his other work, so I cannot say if this was his fault or the director's. I'm sure he's done fine in other movies with better direction, and I'm not saying that Shyamalan is a horrible director. He has heart, and his writing is probably okay. It's just the story is okay. Things could have been changed, and I think, like, he also did this with his daughter, directing some of the scenes. Oh, jeez, I wonder if she got his directing approach. But they had two directors, in a way, so, it's not one of his worst movies, I'm pretty sure. I mean, there's things like The Happening, that is, like, where this is more, a bit better quality, I think. And I'm sure it was funny in some areas, like the reactions of some of the kids. Like, I thought it took 10 times. I did nearly laugh at that one. And when Crystal, the mother of Kara, started talking to Maddox about her first love right after she witnessed her daughter give birth and her grandchild die. Well, I don't know if she saw the grandchild die, but she was probably in shock, but she just suddenly said, my first love was this guy, I forget what it was, but it was funny. Like, the name was funny, just the randomness of her, was funny. I mean, so there were some funny scenes, whether it was intentional or not, but I didn't see a lot of the humor, right? I didn't see, like, what some people actually, I don't think anyone in the theater actually laughed. In my group of people in the theater with me and my aunt, I don't think any of us, I didn't hear any snicker. So maybe we were a group of people who didn't see the humor in it. Like, there was one, I heard there were people who laughed out loud in some screenings, but for mine, it was relatively quiet. They're very subdued people. I mean, even I didn't laugh at those jokes. I eternally laughed. It wasn't funny enough where I burst out laughing, but it was like, okay, yeah, that is clever, right? And anyway, guys, this was a very long video, just like some of my other ones, but I'll try to make up the very lack of videos for you guys. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up. And if you're new to this channel and like what you see, please subscribe and help this channel a lot. And don't forget to hit the bell notification so you'll know when new videos are coming out. And I will see you guys in my next video.